Hello, this is Darrell Gunter, your host for Leadership on WSOU 89.5 FM. Today, we're happy to have back on our program Mr. Patrice L. Jones. He's the partner and creative officer at Enlight Media. And Patrice, welcome back to the program. And I'm so excited to talk about your new digital project called DEI in Context, with the first collection that's the Introduction to Patterns in American Racism. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you, Darrell. It's good to be here.
For those who have not heard your first interview, which was almost like a year ago, because it was May 23rd, today's May 29th. Could you give our audience a little bit about your education and background?
All right. I went to Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana for undergrad, and I am ABD in political science from the University of Iowa, much to my parents' chagrin, who are both college professors. And I had 23 years in higher education publishing, working at Pearson Education. Started as Prentice Hall Publishing, was bought by Pearson in sales, marketing, and then the last 7 years there, I was vice president of creative, global creative.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now, with that background, I'm so excited to talk about your latest project, DEI in Context, in the first collection that's titled Introductions to Patterns in American Racism. First of all, how we talked, you talked to me about this in concept last year. And how did it come about? And first of all, congratulations on the launch of it.
Thank you. So it came about after George Floyd was murdered. In the wake of that, you'll remember that companies started making all these statements acknowledging institutional systemic racism, which we had kind of never heard before. Um, and my former company, I had left Pearson at that point, reached out to me to be on a panel on racism in corporate America and corporate workplaces. So I did that panel, and then I got invited back to do a presentation. And I was like, well, what am I going to present on? And I arrived at, well, I'll do a presentation on the history of racism in America. And I learned a lot preparing for that presentation. And what really stuck out to me was the economic incentives for racism. Um, Everything from Bacon's Rebellion all the way up through mass incarceration and the peonage system, the peonage system, and then the corporate lease. I mean, oh man, I just lost my word. Oh, so sorry, dude.
It's
So
okay.
system by which prisoners would be used as labor for a
Right.
company.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and what struck me was that the conversations about racism aren't really about people's attitudes. They're about how this cultural dynamic, this political dynamic serves to perpetuate the status quo, which is largely about to keep the people who are making money making money. And it's really apparent when you start looking into the history of racism in America.
Mm-hmm.
So I did the presentation, and what shocked me about it, and maybe it was the environment, maybe it was the fact that George Floyd had been murdered and everyone saw it and it was different. It wasn't the police shooting someone. It wasn't seeing someone run from the cops, and there wasn't a conversation of, oh, that guy was holding that big pen threateningly. The cop was scared for his life. You saw Derek Chauvin slowly choke a man to death over 9 minutes, while children begged him to stop. So there was no arguing with what was happening there, and it shook people up. So I started the conversation. I did the presentation, and I ended it with January 6th. And the question that I asked with January 26th wasn't the one. I mean, January 6th wasn't the one that everyone asked, which is, well, what if those had been Black people? What would have happened to them? My question was, if those had been Black people, what would have happened to conversations like this? How would that have reflected on all Black people? Would we have been able to have any kind of conversation about DEI if 2,000 Black people had just run up in the Capitol? And I think that's at the fundamental nature of how we think about race in this country. Is, who's responsible for perceptions, who's responsible for progress, who's responsible for the blowback or limiting progress, and what are the things that affect that. So the questions that I got after this presentation from white people were all about, what can we do? How can we help? How do we have these conversations with our Black colleagues? And they were not argumentative. They weren't asserting that there was no institutional racism. They weren't denying what they had just seen. They weren't making excuses. They really wanted to know, okay, we see you are right. What do we do about this? And I was like, wow, if we can have this conversation, I had to do more actually, kind of trying to guide the Black folks to be like, look, when white folks come at you trying to figure out how they can help, you got to cut them some slack about what they don't know, and that was really encouraging to me to be able to facilitate these kinds of conversations. You start thinking about, how can we do this at scale? And I think the way to do that was to create some learning materials around this content. So we created a single module on mass incarceration. I recorded the entire presentation in an interview style, pulled out mass incarceration, and we created discussion questions. We added sources for additional information. We gave ways that you could get involved, and turned that into a learning module, and went out and got reviews on that. And people were very supportive of that. So then we said, oh, we did this. What do we do with it? And after having a couple of focus groups, we decided that we need to create a product that adds urgency and accountability to existing DEI initiatives and training. Because oftentimes, if you've been through any kind of corporate DEI training, it quickly becomes about what to say and what not to say.
Or
And
diversity of thought.
right. Yeah. Or there's all kinds of different diversity. And what ended up happening was, we thought that if we created this for purpose-driven organizations, right? If you're a check the box kind of company, this isn't for you. But if you're a company who has diversity, equity, and inclusion as part of your values, then this is going to help you drive the urgency around, this is what you're up against. This is how our institutions perpetuate and strengthen this discriminatory system. Then I think understanding that then creates some understanding of the work to be done, and also reinforces the idea, or maybe raises the idea for some people, this place that you work is also an institution, and it has more power to address these issues than you do by going and voting. And I'm not knocking voting, but if you think about when Major League Baseball pulled the All-Star game out of Atlanta because of voter suppression, or an NBA pulled the All-Star game out of Charlotte over the bathroom bill, that has a lot more impact on government than the threat of, you being a swing vote in your state and somehow turning an election, right? And so I thought that was, so the ability to empower already purpose-driven organizations to be more active, and they expect more out of their employees, and their employees to expect more out of their employers, beyond the company's walls, I thought was a pretty ambitious but attainable goal.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we've now created 6 modules. And so we've got slavery, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, lynching, mass incarceration, housing discrimination, education, and an intro. And it's all of them have the accompanying learning materials, facilitator resource guide. So, we try to make it as easy as possible for you to add this work to the work you're already doing, and just to add that historical context. It's reviewed very well. We had a big customer that just adopted in New York City. I'm not going to say who it is because I don't know if I can do that.
Sure.
We also have had several really valuable focus groups and surveys with other companies. So far, our NPS score is above 65 on this thing. As a marketing guy, I'm super happy to see that. And yeah, we're just trying to move ahead. And what's next is we're trying to we've got a American patriarchy is next. We're already working on that. LGBTQ, um, ableism, anti-Semitism. We're trying to create the full spectrum of diversity content because it's all institutional. I think that's what we need to realize is that, anytime there's oppression, there are institutions and systemic mechanisms at play. And I think if we can shine a light on those, we put people in a place where they can investigate it and examine it more objectively. And
So
perhaps,
it's beyond educating folks and giving folks information, it seems like you have multiple primary objectives for um, this DEI in context. And from your perspective, what are the three most important things you want to see this project achieve?
um, so the first thing that I want to do is I want to strengthen DEI programs.
Mhm.
And I think the challenge that DEI has is there are people who are against DEI conceptually from the word jump, right? So they hear DEI programs and they are against the idea of inclusion. They
Mhm.
don't want to see people skip them in line, so to speak, right? That's one thing. But the other people who are opposed to DEI programs are people who believe in the concept of DEI, but think the programs are ineffective. And I don't think they're wrong, right? If you've experienced a DEI program that was about how to play nice in the sandbox,
Yeah,
you walk out of that thinking that's time I can't get back,
right.
right? And so, how does DEI survive if the people who believe in it think it doesn't work and the people who are against it don't give it a chance? So, what I'm trying to do is to make it so that the people who have been through your DEI program are willing to fight to save it. And
Mhm.
I think that's a huge step in terms of driving this kind of program forward and to actually having some tangible results.
Wow. And so it has officially launched.
It has launched.
How does someone get access?
Right. So we are marketing to chief DEI officers, HR leaders, anyone in an organization that makes decisions about DEI training or any kind of DEI initiatives. So,
Okay.
so right now it's an enterprise model, and we do seat licenses. We are investigating ways that we can make it available to individuals. Figuring out kind of a B2C model,
Mhm.
but our initial foray into this market is an enterprise model.
And what about for small nonprofits with a small budget?
You know what? They need to come holler at me. We will work something out. One of the things that we've been doing is talking, hey, if you can, you know, do a survey, a survey or a focus group. Let us pick your brain about what you think about the modules, ways that it could get better, things that we can add to make the discussions more vibrant. We'll work something out because the information about how the messages are being received is really, really valuable to us at this nascent stage in our production cycle. So, yeah, we are at DEI in context.
Mhm.
And you can go there and there's a place where you can sign up for more information that goes to me or a couple of my other partners. I'm at Enlight Media. We're partnering with our sister company, Olinger Studios, who's a
Mhm.
full content development shop.
Mhm.
So we can act on feedback, suggestions, and get back to people really, really quickly. But right now, we are trying to get the word out there about what we're doing and get as much feedback as we can about how to make it better.
Have you had conversations with the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Bloomberg?
We have not. with people at that level. I've basically been on LinkedIn doing some talks about DEI and keep emphasizing DEI is not a marketing strategy.
Right.
You know what I mean? If it's in your values, then, let's move forward. If it's not, then, maybe, you should, go talk to somebody else. Uh,
One of the ideas that immediately hits me in regards to getting the word out is I'm sure you have so many institutions, education institutions in the area. Have you approached the student government associations about coming on campus and giving them an overview about this really exciting program?
it's funny you should say that. We have started to get feedback from reviewers at universities asking us if we'd be willing to adapt it to fit into a higher education model, course model. And so
Mhm.
that's what we're working on right now. So while we haven't been doing marketing on campus, we have been getting feedback from people in education who, it's almost like everybody we show this to tries to figure out a way that they can use it, even if they're not in our intended target market.
Mhm.
So I think it's interesting the idea of going on to college campuses to market the product. We haven't done that, but we've done a lot of, because that's who I know, and that's who the Olinger people know is higher ed.
Right.
And we've actually had
Okay,
some
right.
conversations with people in the high school market that are looking at, is there a way to adapt it to the AP level or AP courses?
Oh, sure. I'm in a fraternity, Omega Psi Phi fraternity, and I got a lot of friends who are in all of what they call the Divine Nine.
That explains a
Um,
lot. That's why you're such a cool cat.
oh, and it seems to me that this could be a lecture series, where you're giving them an overview and showing them some snippets of it, because all of the Divine Nine are very involved in the community, right? Educating the community. And give you an example, my daughter Bailey Gunter, she works for a mid-market finance firm where they do a lot of that, and she's in HR, and she introduced DEI to the organization, and she started a newsletter.
Right.
So,
That yeah, we need to talk some more because I am looking at ways to get the word out. We don't have a huge marketing budget, but we are looking to, in fact, bring on someone to do full-time marketing
right,
for this
right,
product because right now I'm kind of in that Bugs Bunny, first base Bugs Bunny, second base Bugs Bunny, pitching Bugs Bunny,
mhm,
and I need to be able to put someone on this full time because the world of marketing now is it's really about effort, right? Social media is about the frequency of post building, 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 and you can't take a week off, and I've just got a lot of stuff
yeah, I've
cooking.
always said when I was at Elsevier and I joined a startup. It was back in 2007. It was an AI company, Semantic Technology. And I always had a philosophy that marketing is like acupuncture. You just can't put one needle in, right? You got to put needles in all throughout the body, get the blood flowing, and you got to keep the blood flowing. And marketing is the same for that. And so after someone goes through this series, what is your hope in regards to what they'll come away with, and how much more enriched do you feel that they'll be?
I hope that they will realize that they've only scratched the surface
Mhm,
of understanding how oppression works in this country.
mhm,
Right. And that, if you understand it, then you've got some decisions to make.
mhm.
You can either go back to sleep,
Right.
you can realize that the responsibility falls on all of us.
Mhm,
Right. The thing about oppression is it is not the responsibility of the oppressed to end oppression. Right. It is the responsibility of your society as a whole to make itself better. And if you believe a better society is one in which one which is absent of oppression, then it falls on you to figure out ways to end it and to use the mechanisms and the influence that you have, whether you be an individual or whether you be a company
mhm, mhm.
to try to make the world better and end oppression. So hopefully, if people have that awareness, realize that a lot of the stuff that they've been fed about how people are in the situations they are because they deserve it, because they're lazy or because their parents were lazy. And you start realizing, no, that's not what's going on, that there are people who benefited from this dynamic,
Mhm.
right? And that our institutions then are built around this, and that, like I said, I work for an institution. What can they do to help?
Right.
What influence do I have? You know, like if you think about the promises that were made after George Floyd was murdered,
Mm.
companies like Gap Incorporated, well, 55% of our mid-level management is going to be people of color.
Mhm.
Um, and the only people that are going to hold those companies accountable for that beyond that press release are the people who work there.
Mhm.
Right, we're the only ones that can go back in. I was the executive sponsor for Pearson's African American ERG, Employee Resource Group, and
Mhm.
you have access to the CEO and the C-suite in that role. You
Right.
can say, "Hey, what are the milestones for that plan you just rolled out?
That's
Where
right.
are we on that?"
That's right.
Because when they roll, think about it, a 5-year plan at a company. Who in the public remembers a 5-year plan around DEI that's not at that company?
Right.
You know, and so I think that it's very important for people to realize the power that they have within organizations that they're a part of, and therefore they are part of an organization that then has further power and greater power. But you have to stay on them. You have to accountability, right? And if anything, if we can do anything, if we can drive accountability
Mhm.
internally within companies, then I think that we're moving things.
You know, it's interesting. In that 7-hour workshop that I did on AI, there was a statistic gentleman. He's a white gentleman out of Belgium.
Mhm.
Did the seminar, and and the statistic was that the companies that are most successful have successfully implemented true DEI.
Yeah.
And the reason is it happens to do with people from all different backgrounds bringing their expertise and their input into it.
Yeah. You're limiting yourself. Right? If you put any kind of boundaries around who you can hire based on something other than ability, then you're limiting yourself. There are people that have ability and talent that you're not considering. It's super obvious. It's super obvious. You know, I tell you one other interesting thing is that we launched, and this is kind of the dynamic of this world that we live in. When DEI in context was conceived, it was we were in an environment that was very conducive to DEI. People were hiring DEI managers. I think in 2020, between 2020 and 2021, there was a 30% uptick in
Mhm.
listings for DEI jobs. By the end of 2022, there was a 33% reduction in DEI jobs.
Right.
Right. And so we launched in an area, I mean, we conceived in an era of favorable sentiment towards DEI, and we launched into this environment of intense backlash. And I would offer that it's more valuable now. What we're doing is more valuable and more important now than it was in 2020 and 2021, because the backlash is where you have to fight.
That's right. That's right. That's
Right?
right.
That's where the battle is,
And
and so I'm happy to be where we are.
the story that I like to tell, I had an intern, a white gentleman who had worked for 3 years while he was in Seton Hall, and he graduated. Now he's at American Express. When the George Floyd unfortunate situation happened and the Black Lives Matter really took charge, he and I were out to dinner, and he said, "Well, Darrell, but what about me?" And I said to him, I said, "Do you ever worry about being arrested?" He goes, "No." I said, "Have you ever been handcuffed?" He says, "No." I said, "Have you ever been like followed in a store for no apparent reason?" He says, "No." I said, "Welcome to the world of Black folks."
Mhm.
I said, "So what folks are saying is that they don't want to take away what you have. They just want to give people liberty,
Yeah,
the ability to live and learn and enjoy the fruits of this life." And he goes, "Oh, I never looked at it like that, you know." And so it helped him to understand, you know, the situation beyond his privilege, for that.
Right. I think the notion of privilege messes people up, right?
Yes.
It
Yes.
it makes people think that, and I talk about this in one of the videos. I am on couple of the videos, I'm the on-screen talent.
Hmm.
But what I talk about is when you tell someone they have privilege, it can be seen as saying that whatever success they had is due
It's
to,
not earned.
it's
It's not
not
earned.
it's not due to effort. It's due to that privilege. And that's not what we're saying. And I think a more accurate term is certain people are disadvantaged, right? It's not that you have privilege, it's that other people are held down and held back. And I think that's a more accurate description
I agree.
of it.
I agree.
So,
Interesting. There's that video that has been going around for a couple of years now, where they have a bunch of kids lined up on a football field, and
mhm.
they ask them questions. If you have this, or if you have that, take a step forward, or if you had this situation, take a step back. And when you said disadvantage, that's the video that popped into my head.
Yeah, that's called and they call that a privilege walk. That's what that is. Yeah. And but I think it's really important for people to understand that everybody's life is hard and everybody makes the best they can from it.
Right.
But we can't act as if it somehow comes out of your pocket or comes out of your pile if I get a fair opportunity.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, you know the story of Bacon's Rebellion, right? And this is where it all started. Bacon's Rebellion, Nathaniel Bacon was a wealthy landowner and he wanted the government of Virginia to expand into Indian territory
Mhm.
because he felt like he wasn't really able to flex the way he wanted to because he was being limited in terms of the property that he could own. So
Mhm.
he organized white farmers, white indentured servants, black slave. They were slaves and they were black indentured servants, but they weren't generational, meaning that their children would not be slaves,
Okay.
right? And the distinction wasn't black and white in that way, right? There was the terms black and white didn't exist in that point. And they ran up in the governor's mansion. They burned the governor's mansion down.
Mm.
And after that, the wealthy landowners in Virginia said, this cannot happen. And so they created levels and they said that these white indentured servants and poor white farmers, we're going to put you at one level. And then all the slaves now are going to be generational slaves. So their
Oh.
children are going to be slaves and they can never be citizens. And
Mm.
what happened was those white people in the middle, you had the wealthy
Mhm.
landowners, they spent more time trying to distinguish themselves from the people on the bottom than aspiring to reach the people on the top. And that freed up all that tension at the top and it
Mhm.
made them focus on not being at the bottom. And if you've read Caste by Isabel Wilkerson, that's what it's all about. Is that in a caste system, all the conflict is in the middle and the bottom of people just trying to stay up. They're just trying to stay afloat. They don't want to be on the bottom. And they'll do anything to keep the people at the bottom because that preserves their status.
Wow. Patrice, believe it or not, we are out of time.
Mhm.
I want to thank you for coming on the program. We're going to have you back because we got to talk about this a little bit some more. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are here with Mr. Patrice L. Jones. He is the Chief Creative Officer at Enlight Media, and today we were talking about his new digital project, DEI in Context. And the first collection is Introductions to Patterns in American Racism. Patrice, thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you. Check us out, deincontext.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, that wraps it up this week on Leadership with Darrell W. Gunter on WSOU 89.5 FM and streaming on the net. And we want to make sure that you have a great day. But remember, leadership begins with you.